Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Welcome to the Daily Cash Flow. My name is George Robson.
Hi, I'm Peter Siegel.
Peter, this week, Amancio Ortega, one of Spain's richest guys, his company Inditex suffered its first quarterly loss.
They own Zara.
They do, yeah. And a lot of journalists are kind of connecting the dots and saying that these losses are coming a lot from his retail holdings and office spaces. That wasn't explicitly said in the report, but it's kind of what's being pointed at. It's something we talked about before. I wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, so from what I understand, Inditex owns Zara, which is a retailer. And we all know what's been happening in the retail world over the past 4 months. And they also own office buildings and I think are in some hotels as well. Hotels over the past few months, nothing, crickets. Office buildings over the past few months, who knows what they got. I've been hearing that office landlords have been receiving rents anywhere from 25 to 50% of the scheduled rent is having been collected. So if Inditex is within that range, they're off by a lot. And then their retail holdings, just using Zara as an example, I think is probably off a whole bunch. Although I did read that Zara and other clothing retailers experienced a spike with online sales, but
yeah, that was something that was reported. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it wasn't enough to account for the loss in store sales that typically occur. So whatever spike they had in online business, I think was helpful, but I think they probably still had problems. So I think we're seeing a lot of these retailers report losses. I mean, we're in July now, you're into reporting season, you're gonna see a lot of reports coming out from these publicly traded companies, from larger holding companies, because it's gonna impact so many other veins in the tree, suppliers, shippers, packagers. I mean, all of these people are tied to ultimately the retailer having those retail sales. Right. And I think it's gonna be pretty weak.
Yeah. Yeah, and with, speaking of Ortega, who's one of the wealthiest men in the world, we actually have a listener question this week.
From TikTok?
This one's from Facebook. We had TikTok last week.
All right.
But I'll make sure
Can you get me some more TikTok questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna do a TikTok
I'm just an old guy trying to connect with TikTok.
I think that's a good move. I think we'll definitely do that. So this listener was wondering, cash, value, wealth, what's the difference?
That's a great question. I love that one, and I've thought about that one a lot, so I'm going to just jump right into it. So cash is currency. Very easy to understand. Value is what that currency gets you. You're getting one grapefruit, you're getting 2 grapefruits, you're getting 20 grapefruits. 20 grapefruits for the same amount of currency is a good value. And then wealth is a very interesting one. It's different for everybody, George. I mean, if you ask people that aren't rich what the definition of wealth is, 9 out of 10 of them are going to say having a lot of money, right? Having a lot of currency. If you ask people that are rich what their definition of wealth is, they're going to say everything but having a lot of money. They're going to say happiness, they're going to say freedom, they're going to say options, they're going to say being able to spend time with my family when I want to, or maybe it's a combination of all of those. But 9 out of 10 of the rich people are not going to say that their definition of wealth is having a lot of money. Although they do recognize, I'm sure, that having a lot of money then affords them the freedom and the options and the family time that they so value now. So that's how I see the differences between currency, value, and wealth. And I'd love to know what everybody out there thinks also about those 3 things.
That's interesting. That actually reminds me of, you said something interesting last week when you were talking about the advice that you had given to that 26-year-old woman that had asked you for advice.
I'm psyched that you find what I say interesting, George.
Every once in a while you have a kernel of something that strikes my interest. And you had said that it was important not just to know whether or not she wanted to make $100,000, but why? And my first question is, why wouldn't you want to make $100,000? So that's my first question. So I'm going to start
that's
with
a
that.
good question.
Yeah.
Look, whatever your number is, you got to know two things. You got to know what makes you happy. You got to do what makes you happy. We've talked about doing what makes you happy. Be passionate about what you're doing, because when you are passionate about what you're doing, you're likely to continue to do it longer and not just stop, quit. Right? The definition of failure to me is not continuing. Do what makes you happy so that you can then earn the money that you want to earn. The self-awareness, will earning $80,000 doing what you love be the right decision for you, or will earning $480,000 a year but not really enjoying what you're doing but getting the money make you happy? And I encourage everybody, you have to know both what's going to make you happy and then what's your number, right? What's your number? Do you need to make $100,000? And the answer to that is based on your lifestyle. If you can live your lifestyle with $100,000 and have enough left over to invest, to save, to fund your rent, your housing, your food, your medical, all of those things, and have the money left over necessary to invest, maybe $100,000 is your number. And if you're still happy at $100,000, great. But if you're not happy at $100,000, what's your number? And once you decide what your number is, be able to say why that's your number. Is that your number because it affords you a larger house, it affords you more vacation time, it affords you more lifestyle, it affords you more money to then invest? What's your number and why?
So for you personally, that was my second question.
Yeah.
What's your why? What's your underlying why for why you pursued the financial success that you've pursued?
I mean, so many reasons. I mean, I love what I do and the industry that I'm in. I'm extremely psyched to be in it. I love it. I'm passionate about it. So I get up every day and I really like what I do. It so happens I'm good at it. And when you're good at what you do, in my particular industry, there's opportunities to make a lot of money, which I've been fortunate enough to be able to do. For me, I have so many dreams and goals to achieve that the financial part of the equation for me fuels and enables.
Makes that possible.
I love my time with my daughter skiing. I mean, I skied with her on the top of the mountain this past winter, just the two of us with no, training wheels and no special assistance equipment or anything like that. It was like real skiing. I mean, it was great. I was crying. I was so happy. I mean, moments like that is what having financial freedom allows me to do. That's just one example.
And it's an example of that value that we talked about again, which is that the cash is not what makes you wealthy. It's the fact that you were able to spend that time with your daughter.
That's what you do with it. I mean, look, there's always someone that's got more money than you, no matter who you are. If you're this guy Ortega we were just talking about, all he has to do is look to his right and see someone that's got more money than him. And he's a huge guy. And no matter where you are, there's always someone that has less and someone that has more. So it's not a matter of having a lot. It's a matter of what are you going to do with it and what does it mean for you and your life. So for me, it means being able to invest. I love investing. I love running my business. And it means the freedom and ability to spend time with the people I love doing the things that I love. And I think for a lot of people out there, it likely means something similar. For other people, it might mean taking vacations. For other people, it might mean buying a lot of expensive cars. Like whatever your thing is, right? My thing is being in my business and being good at my business, spending time with my family doing stuff that we love. So that's my why.
That's great. And in the first part of your question, you mentioned kind of running the numbers and knowing what your number is. And that kind of goes back to you can't manage what you don't measure.
Right. And the personal financial statement.
Right. Well, and that's what we did. The personal financial statement. That's one tool that you've talked about in how to manage and how to measure. Right. Do you have any other tools that you use personally for
Sure.
managing and measuring?
Many. I mean, so in my business life, I'm constantly measuring collections, vacancy, occupancy. I'm measuring absorption. I'm measuring net operating income. I'm measuring units under management. I'm measuring my budgets to actual to projected. Did I hit the projected? Those are just a few in my business life. And I'm looking at those numbers every day. My personal life, I have my personal financial statement, which we've just spoken about. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at my bank accounts. I get on a scale and weigh myself, metaphorically and literally. I've been doing a calorie-restricted, vegan, fast-mimicking diet for the past 8 months. And so getting on a scale is quite literally something that I've been doing more this year than in the past. I'm constantly taking stock of performance, and I'm constantly measuring how I'm doing and if I'm executing right. I mean, you have to know. If you don't know, what do you know to fix? You know, and there's really only two things that should ever come of you measuring anything, whether it's personal or business related. You either have to celebrate it or you have to fix it. And if you're not doing either of those two things, why bother measuring in the first place? We've talked about it all comes down to execution, right? So it's great to measure, but what are you going to do about it? So if you're measuring, either celebrate what you see or fix what you see. Those are the only two outcomes that should ever occur from you taking measurement. And if you do those two things enough, you're going to have a great balance of both, and you're on a great track.
I was just listening to a podcast by Josh Whiteskin and Tim Ferriss, and they talked about that, about the feedback loop, how we think of information as the be-all, end-all, and that'll just catapult us into success. But oftentimes,
what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, more information is not the thing that we need. It's more motivation, more.
It's information overload, man.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it comes down to you, execution, and what are you going to do about it? You have to have the information to make good decisions, but once you have the information, execute. Use that info. Execute on it.
Yeah, totally. So Peter, in sports, there's cross-training. Athletes will cross-train and work on other techniques and other skills in order to take it back to their home sport and kind of get better.
Enough.
Do you have other disciplines or other interests that you found have helped you develop in real estate?
Well, George, I mean, I'm a quadruple black belt. No. Listen, so good question. Two of them come to mind very quickly. These are real estate centric. The first one is become very proficient at using spreadsheets. Spreadsheet modeling, financial modeling, project modeling, budget modeling, forecasting. I mean, these are all, it's the bread and butter of what we do when we analyze a deal. Is it a good acquisition to make? Is it not? Is it a good investment? Is it not? So I have spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours in front of a screen in Excel sheets. And there's a phrase that I like to use that really, I think, describes what the experience is for me, and I call it living in the cell. So anybody that knows spreadsheets and who's poured themselves over spreadsheets for any length of time knows that you get all sucked up into the cell. You're like, B3 is connected to L4 times 32, and then it redirects you to the other sheet, DD 47 divided by AL 13, and you remember what all of those individual cells are. I mean, you're backtracking to find errors, you're confirming accuracy, you want to make sure your modeling is correct and your numbers are right, and you live in the cell and you get all into it. You can't have any other distractions, you can't have people talking to you, you're in the cell, you're in the moment, and you are so deep in it, and you're living in that cell. So when you get to the point where you're using spreadsheets enough and you're good enough at it that you're living in the cell, you're on the good track to really helping your real estate game.
Yeah, it's funny, you kind of, with the Excel scenario, you're kind of coalescing a vision with details and kind of combining those two things.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that, coalescing a vision with details. George, again, you got to be on this side of the camera. Let me film you.
We'll try that one time, yeah.
The second thing for real estate-centric cross-training, I think, is become an expert in construction. The single biggest thing, once you learn how to model and get a hold of the numbers, is get your hands around construction, because really we're talking about real estate, it's land and bricks and mortar, right? So we got to understand what the bricks and mortar part of that discussion is. When you go to a building, what's the age of the roof? What's the deferred maintenance that you then have to sink into it as a new owner? What's the apartment renovation budget? What's the exterior renovation budget? I mean, all of these things are necessary in order to then go back to your spreadsheet that you're living in the cell and put in the right numbers for your for your capital requirements and for your budgeting.
And then that helps you interface, I would imagine, with the people that are doing the construction.
Absolutely. You're interfacing with your contractors, your subs. You don't want to be taken for a ride. You want them to view you as a conversational equal. You're not there swinging the hammer with them, I wouldn't think, but you want to be able to speak with them intelligently about their job, about their business, because it's your business. And I think about some other things too. They're not so much real estate centric, but they're general business items. So the first one is, and we've talked about this here a bunch, and I can't stress it enough, become a master at presentation, sales, marketing, communication skills. Eye contact, body language, tonalities in your voice, body movements, hand movements, right? I mean, these are the things that keep people engaged. These are the things that prevent your listener from just tuning out. And for some people, it's ending a sentence on a high note. For some people, it's a lot of hand movements like what I'm doing. For some people, it's a combination of all of that. But I promise you that if you suck at speaking and you suck at engaging your viewer or your listener with body language, with eye contact, they're just going to fall asleep on you, and your objective is just floating away like a kite in the air. So you got to get good at speaking, at delivering your message. And it's so critical.
Are there any like vocal traps or like kind of speaking traps that you've found either for yourself or that you see in other people?
Yeah, avoid being monotone. Swing your pitch up and down. Change the velocity of what you're saying. Sometimes slow down a little bit. Sometimes you just want to speed it up a little bit because you're just frantic and maybe you have nervous energy and you just want to get it out all the time. But you have to really gauge your audience and see what they need, and you have to give them what they need with all of these different features of how you're speaking. But definitely avoid being monotone. You're going to sound like the teacher in Charlie Brown very quickly if you don't change your pitch and if you don't change your tone. And the more you do this stuff and point and wave your hands, I mean, it's good. People like that shit, and they're just going to stay plugged into you for the few seconds that you're in front of them. So it's key, and become good at it. And I know that we're in a pandemic now, and you can't just get up and practice your poetry skills or your musician skills or your singing skills on a stage in front of people so easily right now. Go to social media, boom, make a video, put it up, get feedback, but get really good at looking at the camera. Get really good at delivering your presentation, your song, your reading, your dance, whatever it is that you're doing. Get good at delivering it, because when you get into business and when you get out in the real world, and when you have to start interacting with contractors and brokers and bankers and lawyers and everybody, you have to deliver your message. You're constantly delivering a message all day long. You wake up out of bed, you're delivering messages immediately, whether it's to your family, whether it's to your business peers, whatever's going on. Get good at delivering your message. So in addition to communicating your message, become great at negotiating and have great negotiating skills and tactics. And I think people often think that negotiating means that we're just talking about deal making and cutting a great deal for yourself. And it is that, but it's so many other things as well. You want to win your introductions, right? You want to be in control of your introductions, your relationships, your meetings. You want to deploy things like mirroring. I think a lot of us have heard about that, but for those who haven't, check it out. And if you're not really good at it, get good at it. Because when you start mirroring your counterpart, you're going to immediately develop rapport. And when you develop rapport, your success of achieving your objective in that negotiation or discussion goes through the roof.
There's a lot of videos going around right now of Chris Voss, who's an FBI negotiator, and he talks about mirroring quite a bit.
I love Chris, and he owns a company called the Black Swan Group, and I love everything about what they stand for and what they do. And I encourage everybody to go check out Chris Voss and the Black Swan Group, for sure. And Chris cut his teeth in negotiating, being an FBI hostage negotiator. Now, for those of us in the real world that weren't in those incredibly stressful and potentially dangerous situations, we still have to accomplish a lot of the same things. So seek out advice from guys like Chris, and there's so many others that are out there that have great things to say about it as well. But mirroring is a great tactic. I would get good at that quickly, because that's a very basic one that we can all do. And, often, George, if I'm going into a meeting, I will call my wife or my kid and say hello and sort of come into the meeting on my phone. And I'm a loudspeaker anyway, so I'll come and I'll say, all right, sweetie, thanks. I'll see you later. Can't wait to see you for dinner. Hugs and kisses. Say stuff like that. Can't wait to be on the beach with you tomorrow. Can't wait to be skiing with you again this weekend. Whatever it is. But what I've done is I've communicated so much to the people waiting for me at that meeting, and I've already won. So
It
what did I?
humanizes your experience. Yeah.
I've been humanized. I've been seen as a good guy, probably, because I'm on the phone with my daughter. I've been seen as maybe like a fun guy, because now we're talking about being on the beach tomorrow or being skiing tomorrow. And now I've got sort of this other set of things to talk about in the room for a few seconds with all these people. I'm not just walking into the room saying, oh, hi, Peter Siegel, nice to meet you. Can't wait to listen to your pitch about this product. I mean, when you do that, you're doing the monotone thing, and that's the normal everyday thing. Everyone does that. I'm trying to be a little bit different, and I want to win that room over immediately. So when I go in, when I'm meeting someone for the first time, I'll say, hey, George, nice to meet you. Sorry, I'm just on the phone with my daughter. Hang on one second. All right, sweetie, love you, bye. And then immediately, George, you're like, wow. Whatever you think, it's different than what you thought before you heard me on that call.
Totally.
So I've won immediately, and it's an important position to be in when you're meeting someone for the first time, or when you're even meeting someone not for the first time, but you're trying to drive home a contract, a deal. You're hiring someone. You're making a decision with a landlord of a building on if you're going to rent their office space. Hopefully not in this pandemic, you're not. But whatever your deal is, you're going to have better success if you show more sides of yourself and win that introduction.
Yeah, and what you're really saying there is it's not so much that you're putting on anything, you're just revealing, you're finding ways to reveal yourself.
It's authentic. I mean,
exactly.
I'm not faking it.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I love talking to my daughter, and I love talking to her about what we're doing this weekend, and I do that all the time anyway, but I will knowingly find myself on the phone, walking into meetings, being introduced to someone for the first time, and I will often have that phone call just extend for a couple of seconds, and I'm not embarrassed about it, and I don't think that I'm breaking protocol by being on the phone, coming in to meet you for the first time, and I'm not looking at it like I'm being rude by being on the phone, coming in to meet you for the first time.
Well, and what that does is it breaks down the formal barriers that prevent us from actually seeing who the other person is on the other side of the table.
Yeah, I mean, we're all so stiff when it comes to business and when it comes to meeting people, and it's nice to meet you. I mean, have a little bit of personality. We've talked about relationships. We've talked about building bonds and solidifying the bonds and having moments between people that make great relationships, that are reliable, long-term, trusting, good relationships. I mean, this is sort of how you do it. It's how I do it, at least.
Those are all great things. I'm going to have to practice some of them myself.
Practice them, George.
So, Peter, best time of the week, Zest Quests?
Are they from TikTok? No, these aren't from TikTok.
No, but I think maybe we should start doing that. I'll start crowdsourcing the Zest Quests.
I would love it.
I think that's a good idea. All right, first one is simple. What is your favorite sound?
My favorite sound? I have a few. The first one is my daughter giggling. She's got the most incredible giggle on the planet, and I just do everything and anything I can to hear it as much as possible. There's a lot of tickling that goes on in my house, because when I tickle, I get that giggling sound. And I love the sound of a great vintage guitar through a great vintage amp, I have to admit. So I like...
Any particular that stands out?
I'm an equal opportunity guitar lover. I love Fenders, I love Telecaster, Strats, I love Les Pauls, I love them all. But it's got to be a great tone that I hear. I love great guitar tones. So I'd say laughter and guitars are two things that I love.
Hell yeah. And that actually goes into my second question a bit, because I know the answer. You and I have discussed this a little bit, but I kind of want to dig into it a little bit deeper for the listeners. What was your childhood dream / aspiration, and how has it changed over time?
I can tell you that for a long time, my childhood dream was to be a rock star. I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be up on stage in front of people, slinging music, being like some sort of idol or whatever, right? Rock stars are. I held on to that for a long, long time. It was a fun one. It was a fun one. And I play a little bit of music, and I used to try to do that kind of thing. And actually, that's where I got a lot of my public speaking and presentation skills that I talk so much about here with you, is from being on stage
cross-training
from a very young age and learning how to be up in front of people presenting and performing. So I appreciate that was my dream for so long, because I really honed some skills doing that. And I think that at some point after college that started morphing a little bit into the business version of being a rock star, and I wanted to be successful in business. Right, a rock star is the star of music. Being successful in business, I wanted to do what that was. And that's what I've dedicated myself to.
And self-awareness, as you've said, is so key, and that was part of
Yeah,
that journey.
in a lot of ways, they were the same dream. I mean, being a rock star and then being successful in business. I mean, I find so many similar things about those two concepts. So I really enjoy what I do almost to the same degree as the child in me that wanted to be the rock star.
Well, and it's funny because, you said, I think it was just last week that we talked about how real estate is a people business. And
Completely.
how I think oftentimes those of us that want to be rock stars are doing it because we're trying to connect with people.
Well, if you ask a rock star what they love most about being on stage, they would say turning everybody on, right? Connecting with everybody. That's even a quote from Almost Famous.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So next time you go on to Netflix or whatever you watch your movies on, check it out.
Sounds good. We'll then take a bunch of acid and jump in a kiddie pool.
I'm on drugs!
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
All right, that'll be our sign off for the listeners.
Thanks, George.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
great week.